Okay, so I'm here to discuss the book I wrote my paper on. It is going to be Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir or Wire. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his last name. Um, so Project Hail Mary. This is the same author who in 2011 brought us The Martian, which was of course made into a movie. That was Matt Damon, I think, the guy stuck on Mars. So kind of similar concept with this one. We got a lone main character by himself, not on Earth. In this case, he's in deep space in another solar system, actually. And he wakes up from essentially a coma, doesn't remember who he is, why he's there, what's going on, anything like that. He's just by himself. Well, he's not technically by himself. He's surrounded by two dead people. He wakes up to dead people near him because those were his crewmates who didn't make it out of the coma. So the book is kind of him figuring out what is going on, why he's there. He's eventually figures out he's on a scientific mission to basically save the humanity on Earth because there's a new life form that showed up in the solar system back on Earth, and it is draining the sun's energy. Essentially, it's collecting most of the energy for itself, which is therefore causing problems on Earth because we need the sun for a lot of things. And so of course, this is science fiction. I consider it modern science fiction because of the time period it's set in, which is about mid 20th, 21st century. So not too distant from now. And we kind of know that they don't actually specify a year really, but they do hint at the climate change crisis, which is ongoing currently for us as well in the year 2023. And in fact, they actually make it worse to help save humanity for a long time, or as long as they can, because of this, what they eventually call astrophage, is breeding in the clouds of Venus and then going back to the sun's forming a life cycle between the sun and Venus. And in the process, it's draining or dimming essentially the sun. So eventually we see flashbacks, and then we understand what's happening or happened on Earth in the past. So they sent 3 astronauts who were supposedly coma resistant to figure out a solution. And 2 of them, 3 didn't make it. So it's just on this one guy to figure out and save humanity. Because a lot of science fiction has that trope of it's just one guy versus the world or whatever. So it's kind of similar in that trope that we've seen it before. It is very similar to The Martian in that it is a lot of singular dialogue. There's a lot of heavy-handed science facts just kind of thrown at you. They can get a little tedious, and then sometimes you're like, okay, that does help explain what's going on, because obviously the average layperson reading this book isn't going to have a PhD in physics or whatever science field to understand what the heck he's saying, and that's fine. But basically, this book, I found it entertaining. I have read it twice now, so I can't be like, oh, it was bad. No, I read it twice. They are already making a movie out of it. They already bought the rights to the book before it was published. I think the same people who made the Martian movie, because they figured out, well, that book was successful as a movie. His other ones will be too. He does have a other best-selling book. It wasn't as successful. I haven't heard any rumors of movies, called Artemis. That one's about a female protagonist. And that's about a lunar colony, if I remember right. So because it's science fiction, of course, it takes some liberties. Astrophage is obviously not a real thing that we know of yet. Neither are Talmiba or Iridians. There's several different life forms they mention in this book that obviously we haven't encountered in real life. That's fine. I'm not mad about you including aliens in your science fiction book. Whatever. There is some other liberties that I was like, I mentioned those in my paper. So like the design of the spacecraft, I kind of looked a little funny at. So here's a close-up picture. Ooh, that's a bad glare. So you can kind of see it has a cone that comes off and then it spins in a centrifuge so that you can create a 1G environment inside that cone where there's a research lab, because they realize that a lot of the scientific experiments these people need to do work best at 1G, and why redesign something that's not broken? Just fix the spaceship, because that's easy. Centrifugal Spaceships are, of course, another common theme in science fiction, because that is something scientists have considered, but they also are like highly expensive. Engineering wise, it's probably a nightmare. I'm not an engineer. But to move something that large to create that much G-force, that just seems like a logistical nightmare. So this one's obviously a little bit smaller. It's not a full wheel like you see in a lot of sci-fi movies to create that 1G, but still it's a lot. And so the microgravity problem gets kind of fixed for the lab thing with that solution, but he also kind of dances around human physiology, which we know goes south in space. We know this. Any astronaut can tell you this. He kind of dances around that issue, and in fact, he gets something blatantly wrong, which kind of bothered me as I was thinking about it. So the patients are in a coma, or the astronauts are in a coma while they're going to deep space flight, because they decided that would be more humane than leaving 3 people in a tin can for years and years and years, knowing they're not coming back to see Earth ever again. So the psychological processes there would be problematic. So they're like, oh, just put them in the long-term sleep. And they made like a robot nanny to take care of them. But the robot nanny is not very smart. Maybe that's why the other 2 died. Who knows? Anywho, yeah, the robot nanny moved their limbs and things like that during spaceflight to prevent bed sores and things like that, which we see in a lot of long-term hospital patients anyway. So that is true. That can be done. But the musculoskeletal system really takes a hit when you go into microgravity for long periods of time, and there should be no exception for this rule. And given how long this guy was in flight for, like years, and yet he wakes up more muscular than when he went under. What? No, that's not a thing. There's no Space Gym. Okay, so that bothered me. Like, he should have woken up basically a waif. I mean, he mentions in the book that he was like unstable, had trouble standing and stuff like that. But again, you're in microgravity. You don't need as much effort. That's why your bones waste away and your muscles waste away. See, another problem I had was what I call the universal plot hole filler, which was this material called xenonite. It's made by the Iridians, and its main ingredient is xenon, which is a noble gas, meaning it doesn't react with other things. But he basically says, cause plot, because I can make it react with whatever I want to, and I can make whatever I want out of it. It can be transparent, it could be shiny, it could be really hard, it could be really thick, whatever, because that's what I need it to do right now in this part of the book. And they kind of just gloss over it. Well, we can't really explain how or why it's made that way because I'm not an Iridian. Yes, it's science fiction, but you are dangerously close there. I don't agree with that. And then a couple other smaller liberties. Like, I kind of chuckled at the fact that this book basically said the entire world got together to send 3 people to space to save humanity. Countries don't get along. We know this. And yet you're telling me that everybody put all their differences aside? Nobody was exploiting the fact that humanity was on the brink of extinction? So that guy kind of got a chuckle out of that. I was like, that's okay. I mean, like literally this could happen tomorrow, some sort of earth-based calamity gonna wipe out humanity thing, and we would still have countries picking on other countries because they can. We know this. Why are you looking at this? Again, I wasn't mad about including aliens. It's science fiction. I'd be mad if there weren't aliens. So I talked about the current geopolitical thing of climate change being a main antagonist, if you will, in the story. There's a lot of science fiction, especially modern ones, that keep bringing it up. Like Kim Stanley Robinson brings it up in like every single book he writes. And that's a good thing because it helps bring attention to the issue to a more common and broad audience. I'm cool with that. And in this one, they kind of use climate change. They say basically we would have been far off worse if we didn't have this excessive amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and methane in the atmosphere, because it helps keep us warmer for longer, and we would have noticed problems sooner or had drastic side effects sooner because of this astrophage if we didn't have that blanket around Earth. And so they actually speed up climate change in the book to further insulate the Earth. They literally blow up a whole bunch of icebergs and glaciers to dump excess amount of water and methane. So they make the sea levels rise on purpose, and then it pumps a whole bunch of methane into the atmosphere so to help insulate us for a little longer. Because they're predicting that as the sun dims and we get less and less energy here on Earth, it's going to lead to an ice age, which is going to lead to global famine, which in wars, and lots and lots of problems. So they're trying to put a band-aid on a very large gaping wound. We don't ever find out how long that actually held for in the book, or what the negative side effects of that are, or anything like that. Because again, our main protagonist has been drugged and sent on a spacecraft to very far off and is never coming back. So he never, from his perspective, he never gets to see what happened. And because he's so far away, we don't get to really hear, not obviously a radio transmission is too short wavelength, but we don't get to hear what happened to Earth. So you kind of have to use your own imagination on that, which, depending on how you like your books to end, could be frustrating. It could be fun. I don't know. I like things to be wrapped in nice and neat little bow, so I found it very frustrating. So overall, it got some good reviews. General audiences give it a 4.5 out of 5 on Goodreads. The Washington Post and New York Times were pretty critical of it, but they still said it's okay, but their general answer was wait for the movie. I can see how this would translate to a good movie. Yeah. Apparently Ryan Gosling is going to be Ryland Grace, the main astronaut here. I can see it'll be a good movie. I used just basically to enjoy the book, you can't let a lot of little nitty-gritty details get to you. If you're that kind of person, you may not like this book. So overall, it's not a bad book. Read it for fun. Just don't take it too seriously. And that is my review of this book. Thank you.